Most people walk around completely underestimating their own intelligence, not because they're not smart, but because the way we've been taught to measure intelligence is fundamentally broken. Here's the thing. For decades, we've linked intelligence to grades, test scores, and how quickly someone can solve a math problem. But modern psychology and neuroscience tell a very different story. The research strongly suggests that some of the most reliable indicators of high intelligence have nothing to do with what you scored on a standardized test. They show up in your habits, your emotions, your quirks, the kinds of things most people never think twice about. So if you've ever quietly suspected that you might be more capable than the world has given you credit for, stay with me, because the signs we're about to cover might feel surprisingly familiar. And this is where things get interesting. Most people see self-talk as a strange habit, maybe even an embarrassing one. But psychologists have found that people who narrate their own thoughts and actions tend to have stronger working memory, better focus, and greater self-regulatory ability. When you talk yourself through a problem, even out loud, you're actually engaging your prefrontal cortex more deeply. Research published in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology showed that self-directed speech helps people organize complex information more efficiently. In other words, you're not talking to yourself because something's off. You're doing it because your brain is working harder than average, not just vaguely interested, genuinely obsessed with understanding the why behind everything. Studies from the University of California, Davis, found that intellectual curiosity activates the same dopamine reward pathways as physical pleasure. High IQ individuals don't just consume information, they hunt it. If you find yourself 3 hours deep into a Wikipedia rabbit hole at midnight because you needed to understand how black holes actually form, that's not a distraction problem. That's a curiosity drive that's strongly associated with higher fluid intelligence. Now here's the strange part. This one surprises almost everyone. We tend to think of anxiety and overthinking as signs of weakness, not intelligence. But a growing body of research, including a 2015 study from Lakehead University, found a significant link between verbal intelligence and a tendency to ruminate. The theory is that intelligent minds are wired to simulate future scenarios, run mental threat assessments, and prepare for outcomes most people never even consider. The cost of that, a brain that doesn't always know when to switch off. Psychologists at the University of Minnesota found that people in disorganized environments actually showed greater creative thinking and were more likely to break conventional rules in productive ways. A certain level of mental and physical chaos can reflect a mind that's prioritizing bigger patterns over small order details. If you've ever been told your workspace looks like a disaster zone but you can locate anything in it within seconds, that's not carelessness. That's a different kind of organization. Research from the London School of Economics found that more intelligent individuals tend to be night owls. Their cognitive activity peaks later in the evening, and they often experience what sleep scientists call cognitive hyperarousal. Think about it for a second. If you're lying in bed replaying a conversation from 3 days ago, planning out 5 different versions of tomorrow, or suddenly having your best ideas at 1 a.m., your brain isn't malfunctioning, it's just on. This one is called code switching, and it's been studied extensively in social psychology. Highly intelligent individuals naturally modulate their vocabulary, tone, and even humor based on the person they're with. You might speak very differently with your coworkers than you do with your grandmother or your best friend. That kind of social adaptability requires a sophisticated awareness of context, audience, and emotional cues, all of which are markers of strong interpersonal intelligence. Psychologists call this metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking, and it's one of the most consistent predictors of high intelligence. There's a famous principle called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with lower competence in an area tend to overestimate their ability, while people with genuine expertise are often the most aware of the gaps in their knowledge. If you frequently catch yourself saying, "I'm not sure," or I need to understand this better before I have an opinion. That intellectual humility isn't a lack of confidence. It's a sign your brain is calibrated well.
Here's the thing that most people miss. Intelligence was never supposed to look one particular way. The traits we just covered, the overthinking, the curiosity, the late nights, the self-awareness, they're not flaws your mind developed despite being intelligent. They're signatures of a brain that processes the world at a higher resolution than most. The mind is a strange and complicated thing, and the more we understand about it, the more we realize that intelligence isn't a single number on a scale. It's a collection of tendencies, habits, and ways of experiencing the world. Some of the brightest people you'll ever meet never felt particularly smart. Not because they weren't, but because they were measuring themselves against the wrong ruler. If you're someone who finds yourself thinking deeply about the mind and what drives human behavior, consider subscribing. There's a lot more to explore, and the more you understand about how your brain actually works, the more everything else starts to make sense.